Welcome to this meeting of the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel on 23 August 2023. I declare the meeting open at 2 p.m. My name is Julie Walsh and I'm the chair of today's panel. Also sitting on the panel today are expert members Linda Kelly and Scott Barwick and community member Chris McCann. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call the Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. There are no apologies and there are no declarations of interest for this meeting. The procedure for the meeting, the Council website contains a copy of the operational guidelines for the panel meetings, but I'll summarise the most important points. All panel members have read the business paper, inspected the sites and received a briefing from Council staff. The panel is charged with determining the 3 development applications on the agenda today. We'll hear from registered speakers, members of the public first, followed by the applicant's representatives. There are no registered speakers for items 6.2 and 6.3. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, but that may be extended at my discretion. The panel members may have questions and I may seek a response to any issue raised from the relevant council officer. Once a speaker has spoken, they will not be permitted to speak again unless it is in response to a question by the chair or other panel member. When we've heard from all speakers, we'll move into closed session to deliberate and we'll return to the public meeting to announce our decisions. That will be live streamed. The minutes of the meeting should be placed on the council website within 2 business days, and could I ask everyone to place their mobile phones on silent. So we'll start with the first speaker in relation to item 6.1, DA 230017 for demolition and construction of a 2-storey retail and commercial building at 277 to 293 Bong Bong Street, Bowral. The first registered speaker I have is Barry Anstey. If you could please come forward and sit at the seat. So if you just press the silver section below it should come up red. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak. Barry Anstey is my name. I'm with the Grand Architecture and been involved in property development for over 50 years. My concern is in relation to this report, in relation to this application, that I don't think it's considered properly the DCP in relation to credits for car parking. I don't know whether you have a copy of the DCP sections in relation to car parking available, but I have those available if I can hand them up. My concern is that this development is actually the tip of the iceberg in relation to car parking in the Bowral CBD and credits that apply. To just put it in perspective, my son started the business in 2008 in this particular building you're talking today at 279. He moved to 267 and ultimately purchased that property. There's no Section 94 plan in Wingecarribee Shire. So consequent that he couldn't expand his business at 267 and he bought 28 Wingecarribee Street to be able to extend his business. We've recently gone back and tried to put a DA in for alterations and additions to the 267 property, and we were invited by council to withdraw it, which we've withdrawn, but what they were indicating to us that they required us to provide car parking for the complete development. So this issue that's with this one today, the area that's not being considered is clause 5.4, B4.5D, and the operative word is that D says a redevelopment, and redevelopment is defined by that section to mean a total demolition of buildings on the site and the demolition of such to an extent where the character of the existing development is changed, the replacement of new or larger usage. Now, this clause has been subject to a Land and Environment Court decision of Barrel Garage Proprietary Limited v Wingecarribee before Commissioner Gray on the 20th of January 2021. I've got a copy of that available if it was needed, but particularly at paragraphs 84, the Commissioner said that he's got the wrong numbers. He said B46 and it's actually B45, but he said that as redevelopment it should be considered, and he says that basically the provision has two limbs to it. One is it's redevelopment, and then if it becomes redevelopment, it's a matter of whether the credit should be allowed. In this particular case of the Barrage Garage, he didn't allow the permission, the credits to be thing, because there was a situation, there was no current use of the site. This site consisted, from memory, of about 12 retail uses. It burnt down, and it seems to me quite obvious that it's entitled to a credit, which has been assessed in the report at 55 cars, and the new development requires 61 and they're providing 2. So in my view, they should be paying for 4 cars. Council has now adopted a rate for voluntary planning agreements, and that could be utilised. But what we're seeing is council, in a strategic sense, is trying to make every site within the Barrel CBD pay car parking for the existing building. Now, I just don't think that that's what this DCP really means, and there's this judgment that sort of supports that. The judgment, I really want you to look at clauses 84 to 87 of the judgment in relation to Barrel Garage, which is there, and it refers to another case of FRH Holdings, which is also available there if you want to look at those. But I think that I've not taken an interest in what the design of the building is or the issue. It's purely in relation to the DCP, in my view, hasn't been properly considered. It's interesting to note that in the court case for the Barrel Garage, the author of this report was also the expert witness for the council in that case, and you would have thought that he would have at least covered this clause or made reference to it to provide evenness in relation to his report. I think that's all I need to say.
Thank you. I'll just see if anyone has any questions for you. Linda? Thank you for coming along today, and thank you for providing that material. The next speaker I have is, well, I'm not sure. You can decide who speaks in which order. I've got Angus Campbell-Jones, Kirk Bolte, and Brad Delapierre. Who would like to speak first? Yes, come forward. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, panel, and thank you for the opportunity.
Sorry, just give me your name for the record.
Campbell-Jones.
Thank you.
I'm the proprietor of Campbell-Jones Property. We are the property managers for the applicant's currently burnt down vacant site, adjoining buildings that he owns and other things in the district. We've been employed by the Pongrass family for, at a guess, in excess of 10 years. I'd like to point out that the applicant isn't a developer. He lives in Burradoo. His background is IT, not property development. And he's with the DA application before the panel, he's actually trying to do something that improves the streetscape of the main street and build something that he's proud of and that the community will get some enjoyment out of. He's gone to a huge amount of expense. He's spent in excess of $1 million to get this far, and I just think it's a shame that we're having to have a conversation about a few things when the main street is in the state it's in, with burnt out sites and dilapidated buildings. It's pretty disgraceful, I think, as a member of the community and a ratepayer. But the main points that I'd like to make are, and acknowledging what Mr. Anstey said, the applicant can replace the building with a like-for-like building without having to provide any additional car parks. Despite that, he's made an offer of 30 car parking space contributions, which is going to cost him in excess of $800,000. The other points he's completely happy to address, being the heritage item and the awning. He's happy to redesign that so that council is satisfied. He's also happy to redesign the building to reduce it by 31.5 square metres to address the floor space ratio issue that council had. The sewer, to my understanding, documents were lodged with council on the 15th of February as part of the Section 68 application, and he'd be more than happy to provide any information that council want there. Just I guess the elephant in the room is the car parking, and 60 car parks makes this site unviable. And basically, it'll sit as a dormant site, which is a shame, because the community will lose employment and income opportunities. When Mr. Pongrass has all along been encouraged by council, namely a former council officer, Nancy Semple, who said that this was a once-in-a-100-year opportunity for Mr. Pongrass to do something significant in the town. And I just hope council stick to their masthead on their letters that say we're working with you, because the applicant has clearly shown that he's happy to work with council. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see if there's any questions. No questions from me. Thank you, for speaking. Who would like to speak next? Come together, yes, certainly. So it's Kirk Bolte and Brad Delapierre. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and panel. My introduction is very brief. My name's Kirk Bolte. I am the Southern New South Wales General Manager for Paynter Dixon Constructions. So, as a bit of background, we were engaged following the fire in 2021 by the owner's insurance company to make safe and remediate the site. Following that, the owner, and as Mr. Campbell-Jones pointed out, he is not a developer, doesn't understand development, is not familiar with process, has approached us as a design and construct company and sought some advice as to what we thought he should do with the site. The two options that we presented were option A, take your insurance premium and rebuild the site in its previous form with a cost of X. And option B was take the opportunity to actually rebuild what was there to provide the Main Street of Bowral with an enhanced opportunity at significantly 40% more cost than replacing the existing building. So we were engaged in June 2022 to document the building and lodge a development application, which we did in July 2022. Following that, there's been a number of discussions, and obviously we had engaged Brad Delapierre and Think Planners to come on board as our planners. So I might just hand over to Brad, and he can provide a little bit of background about the supporting documentation that we provided to council.
yes, so if you just stay there, in case there's questions. Yeah, but Mr. Delapierre, you can proceed. Yeah, thank you. Don't go anywhere. No, thank you.
No, thank you, panel chair and panel members. My first question, I guess, is, has the panel been provided with a copy of a letter we provided to council late on Monday?
We have.
Okay, no, it's fine. Well,
Yes, we have that letter. Yep.
no, thank you for clarifying that. That outlines, I guess, our request today is that we'd like council, or the panel, sorry, to consider deferment of this application for 4 weeks. As outlined in the letter and by previous speakers, there's effectively a two-part concerns about this application. There's what I call the primary issue of concern that relates to car parking, and then there's more peripheral issues that we believe we can appropriately address in a short period of time. But the fundamental issue for us as the applicant is the provision of car parking, and that's been the focus of the previous speakers. But to broadly summarise some of the issues, or I guess thoughts in our letter, is that yes, as has been outlined, if you strictly apply Council's DCP, the site requires 61 car parking spaces. There is, as outlined by the first speaker, some interesting clauses in Council's DCP that suggests that there's potential to offer a credit of 55 spaces based on the floor space that was previously and currently existing on the site. There is some wording about how you interpret headings, and I'll leave that to others, etc. So notwithstanding that, if you ignore that for an extent, we request that the panel give consideration to 2 main other issues. One is that on merits, we engaged a traffic consultant to prepare a car parking survey over 2 days, being a Friday and Saturday. Now that car parking survey pointed out that the busiest time for car parking in Bowral was around midday on a Friday, and at that time there was, and I've lost my notes. 226. Exactly, good memory, thank you. 226 empty car parking spaces on there. Even if you, as I said, notwithstanding the wording in the DCP, on general planning merits, there's often consideration given to what was the theoretical generated demand for car parking based on existing floor space, and as outlined, that's 55 spaces. And we put to the panel that this is an unusual scenario given that the site has largely been fire damaged and burnt down in 2021. Also on top of that, as outlined by others, our client is prepared to enter into a VPA with council to provide 30 spaces at another venue, and that VPA, based on council's suggested rate, comes out at 810,000. So given that this overall development is around 8 million, that's a significant contribution that will assist with the long-term provision of additional car parking in the Bowral Town Centre. So I guess, and as outlined by others, if we're unable to get approval of this application, the unfortunate result would be the reconstruction of what most people would consider a fairly bland former 2-storey commercial building that was largely occupied by the ANZ Bank. It's got limited architectural merit, and in the letter provided to the panel, there's a Google Street View that outlines that doesn't have much architectural merit. We'd like to think that the revised proposal, designed by an award-winning Sydney architectural firm Turners, has lots of architectural merit. It also delivers, in our mind, a lot of benefits. It provides sort of 9 shops on the ground floor, 3 offices on the upper level. Also provides communal facilities that would benefit for workers, residents, and visitors, being the communal accessible toilets and also parents' room. And also the architectural presentation is far superior to what was previously on there. So we outlined that, and that's effectively, I wouldn't mind briefly going through some of the other grounds of refusal that I talk about in the table on pages 5 and 6 of the letter, which relate to vehicle manoeuvring. We think that's a minor concern that's subject to our traffic engineer providing some additional documentation to council. We can confirm that delivery vehicles will be able to enter and exit in a forward direction. Floor space, we currently exceed the floor space by 31.41 square metres. We confirmed to the panel today we are prepared to provide revised plans that remove that if we get over the threshold issue of car parking, and it's the cost of providing those plans, which is circa $40,000, that it has led to us not do that. And that also relates to the awning. There's concern that the awning, Council's Heritage Advisor thinks that the awning could be made more compatible with the former Commonwealth Bank building diagonally opposite the site, and we are prepared to amend the plans to do that. And then the sewerage, we think we've provided information to that council already, but if we need to provide more, we're certainly happy to do so. And then the last two issues are the recommended grounds of refusal, are undesirable precedent. We'd like to think that with a complying floor space ratio that it leads to a development that's considered to be consistent with the Bowral Town Centre planning controls, and the public interest. We think again that the provision of a well-designed building that's compatible, removes an eyesore, replaces it with an arcade with all the public facilities, and provides a well-designed building is in the public interest by reactivating the Bowral Town Centre. So thank you for listening to both of us, and we're happy to answer any questions that panel members may have.
Thank you. I have a few questions. If our view is in accordance with the council report view that the provisions of the DCP do require, in the circumstances of this case, 61 spaces, what would be the parking requirement for a compliant FSR? It's a clause 4.6 seeking if...
I think it would drop it by, it's 30 odd square metres, so it would probably drop it to 59 or 60 spaces.
Okay. And then the next thing is, do you have a copy of the DCP provisions there?
I don't, unfortunately, no.
Perhaps you could.
I just noted what paragraphs in the judgment that Mr. Anston.
I just wanted you to have a look at the objectives in clause 4.2. You know, there's a requirement for us to give the DCP due consideration, but to apply it flexibly, having regard to the objectives. What objectives there do you say, if we were to take the view that the DCP did require 61 spaces, but there was consideration about varying it downwards, what objectives there would you say we could rely on?
Well, when you read, I guess, the objectives, as I'm quickly doing, it's objective B, because we are looking at providing a 30 car parking space VPA, so that would assist with providing communal public car parking in appropriate areas. And then I guess we are providing 2 car parking spaces on site, so that would comply with objective C, and we'd meet objective E by ensuring that our car parking space, which is buried, are visually attractive, and F, we would meet the objectives by the limited on-site spaces. We're utilising an existing access point and not providing a new access point to the site.
Thank you. And my next question is, one of the arguments in the report for refusal is that to allow this site to be totally redeveloped with less than the 61 spaces, which are said to be required by the DC, would set an adverse precedent, because presumably there'd be a number of other sites in the Bowral Town Centre that could be redeveloped, and there could be a cumulative loss of parking compared to what would be required.
I guess
under
the
what do
first
you say to
point
that?
is often told to us as consultant planners is that every development application is considered on its own merit. The unique, I guess, opportunities or unique nature of this site is that it actually is predominantly a burnt, remnants of a burnt down site. So there's no opportunity to continue the current commercial uses on the site, unless we start putting some food trucks on the burnt down nature of it. So it's different to someone that's seeking to do alterations or additions or consolidate 10 sites within the Bowral Town Centre and seek to demolish those and redevelop that in a coherent manner. In this case, the buildings have largely gone and been burnt down on the site. It's a vacant site. It's an eyesore. It's unattractive. There's, in our minds, there's 2 options as outlined by the previous speaker. We can rebuild using insurance money exactly what was there, and we all know when you use insurance money, you get exactly what was there. You get no changes. You get no increase. You get the exactly same level of amenity with there. So that's what I say is the unique nature of this site, is we are talking about a burnt out building. We're not talking about a developer that's pieced together 5 or 6 sites and looking to redevelop those sites to create larger tenancies. This was a large site. we are effectively largely seeking to re-establish the building footprint that was there. We've undertaken already that will reduce the floor space to comply with council's controls there. You know, the development that was largely on the site required 55 spaces. It's, you know, the current development before the panel, you know, has an increase of 6 spaces. So it's you know, effectively redeveloping a burnt down site that has, you know, largely no parking. There's one tenancy that's got provision, I think, for 1 or 2 stacked spaces at best, which is the former Dick Smith electronics site.
Thank you. And my last question is, are you seeking a deferral of our determination for 4 weeks? Is that what you said, or?
Yeah, correct. So we're aware that there's issues in what I guess I termed earlier the Part B issues that require amended plans and documentation to be prepared. We seek deferral, you know, and obviously as part of that, we'd obviously like the panel to support the Part A issue, which is the parking provision. And if the panel does that, we'd like a deferral for 4 weeks to provide amended information back to council to satisfy the remaining concerns.
Can I speak? I'd just like to echo a comment from the owner of the site, Mr. Pongrass, is that his view is that the offer that has been made for 30 spaces is well above what the original offer of 20 spaces was. He would like that offer considered as an immediate action at your discretion, and should that not be accepted, then the action following the deferral may be to revert back to what was previously on the site.
Thank you.
There's one very technical question. You mentioned remediation after the fire, so that was one of the questions I did ask of the staff about the remediation. So the site has been cleaned and the site rehabilitated as far as the aftermath of the fire, just to confirm that.
The site has been completely remediated. However, there are still buildings on that site that are structurally inadequate. And if you had been to the site, there you will notice on some buildings there is propping, and there is extensive structural propping within the actual confines of the site. So some of those buildings would most definitely require demolition down the track. But as far as a site goes, it has been cleaned of all contaminated material that we're aware of.
Yeah, so from the SEPP perspective, we're comfortable that the site is suitable for redevelopment, if that was the technical question, Mr. Barrow.
I was actually given more comfort when the site had been remediated, that was the case. I assume so, and it's good to hear that was. I guess for Mr. Delapierre, in terms of the deferral and the latest VPA offer, I guess there's probably a bit more mechanics behind it that would require more time, because that would require the council and not the panel to consider the merits of the VPA offer to then be reported back to the panel. Has that sort of additional potential time factor been considered into your thinking?
Look, it has to an extent. I'm aware that we wouldn't have a VPA in place with a 4-week deferral. My understanding is that council has a set rate of $27,000 per space, and so we'll be looking at doing my intention was to mimic what I call the SSDA process, which you don't necessarily have to have a VPA signed. There would need to be a VPA drafted and agreed by the parties, and then there would be discussions that would occur with council and I guess the panel about how you securitise that prior to determination of the application. So that was the intent, but I'm aware that no panel likes deferring something for 6 months. So I think that within a tight 4-week time frame, we could provide enough comfort to council and the panel that an SVPA was certain and had been established, I guess, if that's the correct phrase.
Okay, thank you for coming along today, and
Thank
thank
you.
you for
Thank you.
providing that additional information. There are no registered speakers for items 6.2 and 6.3. So in those circumstances, I'll now close the public meeting and we will go and deliberate in private, and we'll come back to announce our determination in here, and that will also be live streamed. So if you don't want to wait, you'll be able to see that on the live stream. So I now close the public part of the meeting at 2:30, and as I said, we'll be back to announce